Jay here for Stretford, Paddock. This is it. This is the big one. Manchester United under the lights against Galatasaray in the Champions League. With me, as always, is Mr. Joe Smith. Joe, normally I approach a Champions League game with excitement, with anticipation.
Oh, yeah.
I'm giddy. I can't wait. The first Champions League game at Old Trafford for what seems like an eternity. But going into this one, it feels like you sort of heading towards prison. It's like, this is going to be horrible. I can't bear it. What we're going to do? Because there's a lot of pressure on Erik and this team because of the woeful starts of the season we've had. Yeah,
this is very much the sort of that kind of the old fabled, what would you do if the plane's crashing? Oh, I'd have sex on the way down. Yeah. This is that sex, isn't it? The plane is crashing. We are all going to die.
Yeah.
But, you know, the sort of fleeting 30 seconds of joy that we get on the way, even it feels as though we are heading for disaster this season.
It does.
I've seen managers get to this point, and I've not really seen one claw it back from here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think. Ole had that horrendous run, didn't he? And then got another year or two out of it afterwards. You know, the end of that first season.
The thing with Ole was he got appointed as that run began.
Yeah.
When the wheels came off, people forget that with Ole. Caretaker manager, amazing, but then we lost at Arsenal.
Yeah.
So we dropped out of the top four. We never got back in the top four that season. And we lost at Molineux, I think, to get knocked out of the FA Cup. Then we made him permanent manager. Then he went on this horrendous run. And because he'd only just been made permanent manager, the club more or less said, well, just get to end the season.
And because the next season was relatively decent, we kind of, he stuck around. This is different.
For the interest of transparency, I'm a little bit older. Fergie had this kind of run.
Of course.
But you're younger. I don't think you were born when that happened.
No,
so you
this
can't
is pre-Premier League, Glazers, pre the money in football, pre the cycle of football that we're in at the minute. This is almost a different footballing world to them.
This is. And the sort of the similarities actually are when we saw, again, Molineux's the buzzword, isn't it? Pete Molineux's bed sheet that said 3 years of excuses and it's still crap. Sarah Fergie. That came during a game we lost to Crystal Palace. Yeah. And that is often looked at as a sort of, almost around that time was a turning point.
Yeah.
Some will say it was a little bit later when we went on that FA Cup run. Ten Hag needs to have his turning point. He needs to have it quickly, doesn't he?
He does. And it's just tough because it's a shame that, some games we've been terrible in this season. Bayern Munich deserved to lose, awful. I thought the
Wolves game, even though we won, we were poor.
We were poor. The Forest game, they sat back, so it's hard to judge, but we were okay. The Tottenham game, I thought first half we were very good, second half disastrous. Yeah. Arsenal, I thought we were pretty good throughout and we were slightly unlucky to lose. I thought the Palace game, we were pretty good throughout and slightly unlucky to lose. And obviously if you lose, the luck eventually is just, that is not luck, it's just your poor performances, whatever. But, 80-odd% possession, 70-odd% possession, all the chances, all the shots. I think they had 3 shots on target and scored the winning goal. Like, I'm not saying we're playing great and this is all a joke, but it's everything that could be going wrong is going wrong. Off the pitch, we're not, not getting any luck, terrible injuries. On the pitch, it's all going, if it could go badly, it's going badly. Like, even Forest, to be 2-0 down after, 7 minutes, there was an element of bad luck to that. It's just all going wrong. And eventually that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's luck or not, you lose your job. So this is a lifeline. And these cup runs, Carabao through, Champions League, we need to get through. FA Cup, when that rolls around, if we can make a run there, that might keep him his job this season.
Yeah.
We could finish 5th. If we get to a semi-final of a Champions League, I don't think he's getting sacked.
No, I don't.
If we win an FA Cup, I know obviously it happened with Van Gaal, but we're a decade on from that with a team that hasn't won anything major in that time, or none of the big trophies in that time, Premier League or Champions League. The expectations are different now to what they were when Van Gaal took over, which was 12 months after we were champions.
Yeah,
we aren't the same team. The pressure isn't as high. Unfortunately, the standards have dropped. If we can win a cup or get far in the cups, that might be what keeps him on. And I think Ten Hag's still the right man.
No, I do.
It's just a shit situation. And we have to start winning these games, and the Champions League is probably going to be the way that he saves it if he does.
Definitely. I mean, the one saving grace about that loss away at Munich is that is the toughest game in this group by a country mile.
Yeah.
Away at Munich was the game that you looked at and went, okay, probably going to struggle to get something out of that game. we'll bounce back from that, or it's the other games you look at. Galatasaray at home is one that you look at and you go, anything less than a win is a massive disappointment. Yeah. There aren't any excuses that. Now, Galatasaray, we're going to get to them in a minute because they have got a lot of players you might actually recognise. Because at first I was like, I don't know anyone for Galatasaray, and then you were running through it and I was like, actually, yeah, I do know a few. But one player that springs to mind or stands out straight away is Wilfried Zaha. There's a great piece in The Athletic by Daniel Taylor, my favourite journalist, looking at Zaha's time at Manchester United, what went wrong, how the signing just didn't work out. And when I was reading this, what it sort of showed me was this is almost indicative of every transfer that's gone wrong at Manchester United post Sir Alex, because
there's been a lot.
There's been a lot. Yeah. The vast majority of our transfers haven't worked out, if we're being brutally honest. No. And some of them have been sort of massive money signings that you think, oh, this can't fail, and they have done. Likes of Di Maria, likes of Falcao, even to a certain degree Paul Pogba didn't quite live up to that expectation. But with Zaha, you looked at it and you go, Fergie bought him, then Fergie left. So he was a signing from the previous manager by the time Moyes took over. Moyes didn't really fancy him. No. We didn't nurture him, didn't look after him. There's stories of him being just left to his own devices, being bored, not having anyone to hang around with, going to, I think he went to Christmas dinner or tea at Dougie Freeman's house, who was the manager at Bolton because he knew him from his Palace days. Yeah. Just wasn't looked after for a 20-year-old kid. Sort of
stranded,
yeah. Then Van Gaal comes in again, he doesn't really fancy him, doesn't know what to do with him, almost puts him back on trial. He's like, so let's see how you get on in this training game. Almost like he had another trial. And that has been the sort of the MO for a lot of signings at Manchester United. They've been brought by one manager, not really worked out. The next manager doesn't fancy him, and then they get cast aside. And Zaha, I know we say this a lot, every returning player, but it's not all the club's fault. He could have done a little bit better himself, but he wasn't really given many opportunities. And it just sort of shows you these transfer problems we've had, and now we're going to face him. You won't be surprised if he has got a bit of an axe to grind.
Yeah, I think as well you can look at, I know obviously if a manager's not succeeding and they're not good enough, sticking with them isn't going to fix everything just because they get to bring in their own players. But you look at the teams that have actually won stuff in the last 10 years. It's Chelsea, who sort of do their own thing and are kind of being found out now. Obviously, things have just gone ballistic there. And they do sack managers and win stuff, so they're the outlier here. But look at everyone else, even in the Premier League era. Like, it's teams who have had managers for a long period of time who start winning things, or 2 or 3 years. Most success at the moment isn't managers who've been there a year. Klopp took time. Even Poch, by the time he started pushing for, he never won one. Champions League, pushing for titles. He'd been there 2, 3, 4, 5 years by the time that happened. Pep even took a couple of years with infinite money, the league champions, and himself being, let's be honest, a genius. Like, it still took him time. The era of the Joses and the Contes and those sorts of managers looks to be over. And especially for United, we aren't good enough to go from being 6th and awful under Rangnick and Solskjaer to challenging for the Premier League in 14 months.
No.
We aren't good enough for that. And we are too far adrift of the top teams. And we are too fragile in confidence. The only way this is going to work, whoever it is, it may not be Ten Hag, but let's assume for argument's sake that it is. The only way Ten Hag is going to succeed at United isn't after a season. It's going to be after 2, 3, 4 seasons. As much as it pains me to say, if we bring in the next one, it's going to be restarting that process. And it just is. I don't see how you can interfere with those really established. Even Klopp, who has a year on, a year off, they look to be good again this season. It took him time, and you're not going to puncture through that and Pep in 1 season or 2 seasons as a manager. It's really, really hard to do that. I think, the Zaha thing typifies, like you said, the transfer fiasco at United over the last decade. We need to let a manager properly build a squad and then replace players. That's the thing you always say. Pep was allowed not just to bring in his own players, but go actually, even though I thought Claudio Bravo, who was good enough to win me big trophies at Barcelona, could do it at City, he can't.
Yeah.
He was proven, I wanted him, and I'm still saying he's not good enough and I need a new one. Let's get Edison and let's win everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's people like, oh, well, Ten Hag brought Casemiro in. If he's not going to win as the Premier League, he needs to be sacked. Well, maybe not. Casemiro wasn't his first choice. He didn't get the player he wanted. Maybe that's not going to work. I'm just using him as an example, but you should be allowed to really pick a squad. If you're going to stick with the manager, you've got to stick with him.
I said this about certain signings that the manager made, and I always compare it to Fergie. When Fergie came in, he had this long-term vision. In his first press conference, one of his first interviews, he spoke about the club, not the team, the club. Yeah. I need to sort this club out because the club was rotten. and he had to revamp the scouting system because we had, I think, a third of the amount of scouts that Manchester City had. We were training on a cabbage patch. Half the team were alcoholics. Yeah. Like, it needed a massive sort of revamp, and he did that. But in the short term, we bought players that helped us just challenge for a bit and win the FA Cup. Yeah. Players like Neil Webb, like Danny Wallace, these weren't long-term signings that ended up staying for very long. No. They stayed a couple of seasons and then moved on. Yes, you had players like Gary Pallister and Mark Hughes who were here a bit longer, but some of the signings were made, right, let's get the house in order now. Yeah. That's what Erik Ten Hag's done with some of the signings. Christian Eriksen, Casemiro, these are players that probably, I know they're on quite long deals, but not going to be here for the next 10 years. They're here for sort the team out now, help us win and challenge for certain trophies, which they've done. We've just won one, finished third. But then you've got other players that are a more long-term option, which hopefully will come good. And we've seen some of them already showing what they're about. With all that being said, let's get into predicted 11s. Give us your predicted 11 for the game against Galatasaray and explain yourself.
Ten Hag's mentioned in his press conference that Anthony could potentially be available. I'm just thinking match fitness probably won't be there, so that's the only reason he's not playing. Yeah. But other than that, it's almost unchanged. I've brought in Garnacho for Pellistri. Yeah. But I just think the performance we put in against Palace, and it wasn't amazing by any means, but I think that should have won us the game against Palace. We had chances, again, we missed them. They scored a fantastic goal that, most of the time they don't score. Our XG was 1.8, theirs was 0.8. We should have got a goal or two in that game. I think if we put in that same performance again, we'll win. As people want everything to be ripped up and started again because we've lost a game, we should have won that game. If that game had been flipped and all the stats had been reversed and it was us that won 1-0 with 3 shots on target, 20% possession, people would be saying that was a disgraceful performance from Man United. But because it's Palace and they're the underdog, and I get they're not going to dominate, people are going, United didn't deserve to win. Well, we did. We were the better team. We made more chances, etc., etc. It doesn't always happen, but I don't think you need to just tear everything to shreds because we lost the game. I think that team and that performance would beat Galatasaray 9 times out of 10. So other than Pellistri, who's been a bit anonymous since he's come in, I'm sticking with it. Okay,
Marcus Rashford's been getting a lot of grief. Yeah, he has. Always. I mean, Andy Tate sat where you were after the Palace Carabao Cup game and said, drop Rashford. He's been trending on social media sort of since Saturday afternoon. Everyone's saying drop him. You're saying stick with him.
And who are you bringing in? Garnacho, who started the first 2 games of the season, and I like him.
You've got him on the right anyway, haven't you?
Well, yeah, but off the left-hand side, who playing instead of Rashford was poor. Yeah. He didn't really get involved. He was quite wasteful with the ball. He played like a teenager, which he is, and he's entitled to do so. But he's not going to push Rashford out of the team. Who else are you playing there? Sancho, he's not even training. Anthony, just come back to training. Martial on the left, he's not had a world-class performance for 5 years. Like, who are you playing? Maybe Bruno you stick out there and you put... but then you can't take Amrabat out of the defence because they're going to defend us. You've got to play Rashford, obviously. He's one of our best players and there's no replacement for him.
I said in my news, I said the likes of Rashford, Casemiro and Bruno need to step up. Casemiro's
been too inconsistent. I'm not saying he's immune from criticism.
But I want them to step up. Yeah. And the way to get them to step up is to play him.
Yes.
So I'm with you. I would start him, but I expect them to improve the performances because Casemiro was great against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup. But what would he do? He hasn't been good enough in the league. Bruno Fernandes has been far too inconsistent, and Marcus Rashford, he's had a couple of good games, but not enough this season. He needs to step up. Yes, we are over-reliant on him, but he's got to do better. So I want to see the likes of Bruno, the likes of Casemiro, the likes of Marcus Rashford, who on their day are world-class. Yeah. They need to show that, and this is the perfect opportunity to do that in a Champions League game against opposition who are beatable. So we'll go into my 11, and I've got the players that we mentioned are in. I've brought Hannibal into that midfield. I think we missed his energy against Crystal Palace in the league. I've got Mason Mount on the right. The only reason Garnacho's not starting for me is I think he's a great option off the bench, and I think if we do have the likes of Anthony and Garnacho on the bench and things aren't working out, then you can change it. I will say this, I do feel a little bit sorry for Rasmus Højlund. I think he's running himself into the ground. He's new to the Premier League, he's new to this sort of stature of club, and I don't think he's really getting the rub of the green or the service he perhaps needs. With all that being said, we'll move on to Galatasaray. Yeah. We know they've got Wilfried Zaha. They've actually got a few players that we should know, haven't they?
Yeah. Zaha, Ziyech, obviously at Chelsea, Davinson Sanchez, Ndombele, who United wanted, went to Tottenham, was crap, looked really good, and then was crap again. Then they got Torreira, who was defensive midfielder for Arsenal for a number of years. They won the league by 8 points last season. They're sort of perpetual winners in Turkey. They're second at the minute, but they've won their last 5 games in a row in the league. So they're on a good run of form, something obviously you can't say about United. But the main player I want to look at is Icardi, who is, without question, regardless of what you think of him as a bloke, and there's a lot of negatives maybe to him as a bloke, he is a fantastic goal scorer, and pretty much has been everywhere he's been. I think he got something like 118 league goals in 188 games for Inter.
Right.
Like, he's just a very good goal scorer. I think he was captain there and then ostracised for things he said, and he's just a sort of tumultuous, difficult career, but he's phenomenal in front of goal. Yeah, I think he's something like 29 goals in 30 games since he joined Galatasaray. So he is really very much one to watch. He's got 7 in 7 this season. He's just a great finisher. And I think if anyone's going to score from, obviously Zaha's got a little maybe vendetta, but Icardi is just a fantastic goal scorer, and something United were linked with many years ago, but he's still able to put the ball in the back of the net unless it's a penalty being passed to him across the box, when then he'll probably hit the outside of the post. But yeah, he's the one to watch out for, I'd say.
With all that being said, then give us your score prediction.
Got to win. I never think we're going to get a clean sheet at the minute, so I'll go with 2-1 again.
2-1 to Manchester United.
What are you saying? Højlund to score, by the way, definitely. Maybe even Højlund might even get both.
I just think this might be another one of them nights,
Jay.
I do.
What have you done?
I do. I think there's still going to be...
Pick a different team then.
There's going to be light at the end of the tunnel.
Us.
But I feel like this might end up... I feel like we might end up drawing this, I feel like we'll still go through from the group, but I feel like we might end up drawing this. I'm going to go 1-0. I hope I'm wrong, because...
1-0 to us, though?
Yeah, to 1-0 to us.
Thank you.
Get your phones out. Film yourself 30 seconds in landscape, give us your score predictions and send them to paddockmatchday@gmail.com. We'll use that before the watch along on Tuesday night. Me and Joe are going to be here for that, so make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. This has been the preview for the Galatasaray game. That's been Joe Smith. I've been Jay Moy. Thanks for watching.